Perez will see the Ferrari trying to go down the inside, covers in the outside, goes Charles Leclerc, and there's contact too!
Yeah. Thank you for that, guys. Thank you.
One radio message.
Max, if we don't pass Fernando on the exit of 12, can we let Checo through, please? Let Checo back through.
One wordless pause. One team split down the middle. At the 2022 Brazilian Grand Prix, Red Bull issued a late race order to swap their cars. It looked routine, done 1,000 times in 1,000 ways. Instead, it detonated. Max Verstappen, already a two-time world champion, refused to give back the place to Sergio Perez, who was locked in a tight fight for second in the driver's standings. The air crackled. The radio captured it. And the paddock learned something you only see when the helmets stay on and the microphones stay open.
Okay, Max, go and take some points off Alonso and Leclerc, please.
Trust is fragile, even inside a winning team.
George Russell, you are a Formula One race winner.
But that wasn't the whole story. Interlagos, pressure, and a two-step plan. Interlagos is never just another track. It's compact, fast, and mean on tires. The weekend was a sprint format, so the grid had already been scrambled once before the Grand Prix even started. As the race wound down, a late safety car compressed the field. Strategy flipped from long game to end game. Red Bull found themselves with a split. Perez on aging mediums, trying to hang on and protect his championship position. Verstappen with the pace to attack cars up the road, most notably Fernando Alonso, if he could be free to chase. Inside the Red Bull garage, the idea formed with typical clarity. Step 1. Perez lets Verstappen through so Max can attack Alonso. If Max succeeds, Red Bull gains a net result for the day. Perez risks little, and both drivers get what they want. Max races hard, and Checo keeps the points he needs. Step 2. If Max doesn't find a way past, swap it back on the final lap. Simple arithmetic. 2 points can decide a season-ending tie. 2 points can be a career milestone. 2 points can be the difference between runner-up and close, but not quite. On paper, it was sound. On the road, it needed grace. And the last lap at Interlagos isn't famous for grace. Team orders split into 2 sentences. The order arrived in 2 clean sentences. First, let Max through to have a go at Alonso. Perez complied. He'd played the team game before. He knew what late season Sundays often require. Then the second sentence, near the end, if Max can't pass, give the place back. This is the kind of line that can save a weekend for one driver without costing the other. It's the classic time borrow swap. You loan your teammate a shot at the car ahead. If the shot misses, you get your position back. Why do teams issue orders like this? Because constructors and drivers' standings turn on fine margins. Because track position is a ladder you sometimes climb in pairs. Because a team that communicates can get 2 results from one idea. Drivers generally accept it with a caveat. They need to trust that the return leg will be honored. Drivers are competitors first, teammates second, but in the final laps, when tires fade and gaps shrink, teammates can be the difference between a season you remember and a season you try to forget. The refusal, I gave my reasons, the radio crackled. Verstappen's reply was calm, firm, and final.
And a radio check.
Yeah, radio check.
He wouldn't give the place back. He added the line that turned a routine swap into a saga. I gave my reasons. No raised voice, no scrambling for words, just a boundary laid down on a global broadcast. In the cockpit, he pressed on. Across the line, the order remained unmet. For Perez, the math was instant. He had stepped aside as asked. He expected the reciprocity the team had put on the table. 2 points for P6 might sound small, but when you're in a deadlock for second in the championship, it's the difference between an extra line on your career resume and a missed chance you don't get back. His voice on the radio after the flag carried less anger than hurt. He felt exposed. He felt blindsided. He felt, in his words, that this showed who he really is. In a sport where drivers often speak in clipped tempo, you could hear the fullness of that sentence. Why this order was a powder keg? There are team orders that slot in like gears, and there are team orders that grind. What made this one combustible? The swap was requested on the very last lap, when traffic, corner sequences, and rivals in DRS range make choreography risky. There is a reason teams prefer to choreograph swaps on straights with clean exit visibility. Late swaps compress decision-making into heartbeats. Clarity. Did both sides agree before the final laps to the return clause? Verstappen would later say he had flagged his stance in the prior race, and that the team knew his boundary. If the pit wall believed a swap back was a given, and the driver believed it wasn't, you've built a conflict right into your plan. Trust. Perez trusted that the team would enforce the return. Verstappen trusted that his earlier reasons would be respected if the scenario arose. Two different trusts colliding in one corner. Risk vector. Swapping near the flag is not a trivial risk. Rival cars are near, opportunistic lunges happen, and a small misread can turn two cars into an incident. A driver with a locked line through an S section may simply refuse a last-second zigzag. Publicness. Radio is public, orders are public. Defiance is public. When you escalate something on a hot mic, it burns longer. And that's the point. This wasn't only about points, it was about process. What "I gave my reasons" might mean speculation, clearly marked. Verstappen framed it plainly afterward. This wasn't about P6 or P7, it was about something that happened earlier in the season. He suggested he had told the team in advance not to expect a swap under those circumstances. Fans and pundits immediately mapped that hint onto a now famous rumor: Monaco 2022 qualifying. Here is the rumor as it circulated, again flagged as speculation. In Q3 at Monaco, Perez crashed late and brought out a flag that froze the order, leaving him ahead of Verstappen. Some in the public sphere theorized it was deliberate to secure grid position. That claim has never been proven. Perez has publicly denied that he ever crashed on purpose, calling such talk wrong and unfair. Still, for many fans, the Brazil refusal looked like payback for an unresolved grievance. The timeline matched the tension. The quotes matched the mood. The rumor found oxygen, but rumors are blunt instruments. They collapse nuance into a single story. The neutral stance is simple. We don't know what Verstappen said privately to his team about his reasons, and we don't know what weight Monaco truly had, if any. What we do know is that both drivers emerged saying they wanted to move forward, and that Red Bull acknowledged the handling of the order was a mistake. In other words, the team admitted the process faltered, even if the private reasons remained offstage. The human layer: boundaries, disappointment, leadership. Perez's post-race mood wasn't rage, it was disappointment. If you've played the teammate role, you know the script. You move aside based on a promise you'll be repaid. When the promise isn't honored, you don't just lose points, you lose a sliver of belief. You start to wonder which words you can count on next time the radio chirps. That's why his line, "This shows who he really is," cut through. He wasn't arguing about a line in the rulebook, he was naming a breach in trust. Verstappen's posture, by contrast, was about boundaries. He maintains he warned the team in advance, set a line, and kept it when asked to cross it. To him, consistency wasn't disloyal. It was integrity to a principle he believed his engineers knew. Within that frame, refusing the swap wasn't about points, it was about precedent. Drivers, like teams, keep ledgers of favors and lines, and both sides need to see the same numbers. Christian Horner's job in that moment wasn't technical, it was pastoral. He apologized on air to Perez. He promised a debrief. He tried to bottle a fire in a room full of microphones. Team bosses are always asked to keep victory plans and people plans. In Brazil, the second plan mattered more. One slipped sentence in the cool-down lap can echo into winter. Fans, media, and the shape of a scandal. The reactions split as cleanly as the team had. One camp saw betrayal. They said Perez played the team game all year, tire cover here, DRS toe there, strategic blocks when needed, and deserved the swap back. Another camp saw driver autonomy. They argued that orders don't override a driver's right to keep a boundary, especially if the team knew it existed. The rest saw a miscommunication turned theater, a swap promised too late, a refusal delivered too publicly, and a radio message that turned a molehill into a mountain. Online, emotions went nuclear, standard in the social era. That forced Red Bull to do what all modern teams do after flashpoints. Issue statements condemning abuse, call for respect, and promise internal resolution. The important thing to clock here is the asymmetry. A 10-second radio call can create months of narrative. In Formula One, memory keeps receipts. Abu Dhabi reset and lessons in choreography. Before the Abu Dhabi finale, the drivers and team huddled. Publicly, both said the air was cleared. Verstappen pledged to help Perez if a swap would truly secure him 2 pesos. Perez said the team had talked through Brazil and that his priority was a healthy working dynamic. The message was, eyes forward. Underneath the press lines, the choreography lesson remained. If you need a swap, plan it early, rehearse the contingencies, and call it in a place on track where it's safe, visible, and emotionally neutral. Don't spring it on the last lap in a traffic cluster and hope instinct will play nice. The more a team treats a swap like a procedure and not a favor, the less it turns personal. And the less it turns personal, the less it becomes a headline. What this saga actually teaches? Strip away the memes and the noise, and Brazil 2022 teaches 3 sharp things. Team orders are tools, not guarantees. They work when the social contract is as clear as the sporting one. If either driver feels blindsided, the tool backfires. Trust compounds, like interest. Pay it in small deposits, honest briefings, kept promises, early notice of boundaries, and you build enough buffer to survive a bad day. Withdraw it suddenly on the last lap, and the account goes red. Radio is forever. Words delivered calmly can still detonate. I gave my reasons is both a statement and a story gap. Where fans can't see the reasons, they'll write their own, fairly or not. And there is one more gentle lesson. 2 points are small until they stand for something bigger. In Brazil, P6 was a symbol. To Perez, it stood for gratitude returned. To Verstappen, it stood for a promise he couldn't make. To the team, it stood for a perfectly ordinary mechanic that turned extraordinary because it came late and landed hard. Conclusion: loyalty, strategy, and the price of a boundary. Loyalty in Formula One isn't a slogan. It's timing, clarity, and trust, all sprinting at 300 kilometers per hour. Strategy is human. It breathes. It frays. In Brazil 2022, Red Bull asked for 2 sentences of cooperation. The first went through, the second didn't. Between them lies the terrain where championship teams live or die. Private reasons, public words, and the thin line between what's owed and what's offered. If you were in that cockpit, last lap, traffic ahead,
This fights it with one hand tied behind his back a little bit. He wasn't going to put up too much.
a boundary you said you wouldn't cross, do you hand the place back? Or do you hold the line and carry the fallout out? And if you're the teammate who moved aside in good faith, how long before team game starts to feel like a one-way street? That's why this moment stuck. Not because a champion defied a call, but because millions recognize the dilemma. When do you keep a promise to yourself, and when do you keep a promise to someone else? In Formula One, those promises are measured in tenths. In real life, they measure the shape of our character. Drop your take below. Was the refusal fair, or was the swap a debt that had to be paid? And if you were writing Red Bull's playbook for next time, how would you call the order so it never explodes on live radio again?